Welcome back to the Titans of Foodservice podcast. Thank you for joining me here on another episode. Please, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you can leave a 5-star review on whether you're listening along on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, that would be fantastic. Or if you're following along on social, on YouTube or LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, if you can like, comment, or share, that goes a long way. And it's always greatly appreciated as well. Today, I welcome Adam Letizio. He is the Senior Vice President of Foodservice, K-12, and non-foods for A.J. Letizio Sales and Marketing. We talk about his journey as a food service broker and how he got into the business, working with family. His family had started the company back in 1912, which later evolved in 1988 into actually a retail broker, which then became a food service broker as well. And his journey along the way, the tips and tricks he's picked up. And I think it's a really fun conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let's not waste any time and let's jump right into it. All right, Adam, welcome to the Titans of Foodservice podcast. I've been looking forward to this one, man, and I'm glad you took time out of your week to meet with me and come on and do this episode.
Thanks very much, Nick. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it too. I'm really excited to be a part of it.
All right, very good. Well, what I usually like to do with everyone that comes on to the show is kind of set up kind of like a baseline, a background of how did you get into the food service industry?
So I have a story that I think is similar and different. You know, each of our stories of how we got into this business are their own path. And yet the thing we all seem to have in common, and I've heard you talk to some of your other guests about this too, is the food service, the food business in general, and especially food service is one of those things that once it's in your blood, you can't escape from it no matter how hard you try. So I did try, not deliberately, but I ended up back here, as you see. So, but my story is interesting. So my family's business, we've been in the industry for over 100 years. My family started out in the food industry in 1912. And so every step of the way since then, each generation has been involved in the industry in some way. Our business, the brokerage, started in 1988. So I'm a part of the second generation of my family in this business and the fifth generation of our family in the industry in this area. So when I was growing up, I actually worked for the company for about 8 years, all through high school and college. I loved it. It was kind of like breathing. You know, it was easy to forget that you were involved in something that was a little bit different than a normal business up and down the street. But I grew up around food and food people and going to food shows as a kid and working on marketing things in our company here. And I loved it, loved what I did. But in my mind, what I always wanted to do since I was little was I wanted to join the Navy and fly in the Navy. Wow. And I was encouraged by my family to do that. My parents were really supportive of it. There was never a discussion of this is our business, this is what you're going to do. They just supported me and my goals and my dreams. And so when the time came, I kind of left the nest and traveled around the country and the world. And you know, I achieved my goals with the support of my family. And at that time, that was when my wife and I got married and we had kids and loved it. I was in the Navy for about 10 years. And I realized while I was doing that, and I had such a great experience. I learned a ton. I got to travel the world. I got to learn not only about flying airplanes. I mean, you can teach a monkey to fly airplanes, and probably better than me. But what I really learned a lot about was first how to be a part of a small team, and then a larger team, and then how to lead those teams as I got more experienced and more senior. And the problems and complexities of being a part of a team, whether you're on an airplane or whether you're in a factory or whether you're building houses or whether you're selling cases of food products, they're all the same problems and they're all the same challenges. So, you know, I had a great opportunity to learn and do that. But as I progressed through that, what I realized was, geez, I'm not sure this is what I see myself doing for the rest of my life. I love it, but I kind of had reached the level of the goal that I had in my mind. And I hadn't imagined anything beyond where I had gotten to. So my wife and I started thinking about what are we going to do with ourselves? Where do we want to live? What do we want to do? Do I want to go be an airline pilot? Do I want to stay in the Navy for a long time, or do I want to do something else? And Around that same time, my predecessor was getting ready to retire, the gentleman who was running the food service side of our business here. And so I think I was home for Christmas, and my parents and my wife and I were just kind of sitting around talking. And I think the idea kind of came about all at once, that we were like, boy, wouldn't it be neat if I came back here and got back involved with the business? And so that was cool, because I had the advantage of a couple of years left on my contract with the Navy. It gave me a really good opportunity to get my feet under me. And I finished up my MBA at that time and got some more culinary specific training, and was able to come into the job as prepared as you can be. You can never really be fully prepared, but I was able to come into the job having prepared specifically for that for a couple of years, which I think is an advantage that a lot of people don't have when you change jobs. Sometimes you only know about it for a couple of days. So that was a real blessing and a tremendous opportunity. But for me to be able to come back into the business, it immediately felt right. Some days are more fun than others, just like anything. But
yes,
once I was back into it, it clicked, and this was where I was meant to be, and it was like I never left. Like I said, once it's in your blood, you can't escape.
Yeah, you're right, man. It's it's hard to get out of this industry. Yeah, it's such a fun industry to be in too. And you see people like yourself, multi generations, or people who just come in and have been here for 40 years. I think I've 50 years for some of them. Those who can hang on that long. So it's a really great industry. When you're in the Navy, what kind of planes did you fly?
I flew primarily a big airplane called the E6. It's a communications plane based on a 707. So big airplane, lots of people on board, flying around, letting people talk to the submarines and control the strategic weapons that the government has. So nothing overly glamorous. Generally we tried not to be upside down. I wasn't like a Maverick. If I was upside down on that thing, I had some explaining to do. But it was good. I worked with some really incredible people, people who I'm still close with now, and who I really count as mentors. And the cool thing about that was that rather than coming directly into working with my family and in our business, I was kind of in our echo chamber here, and being able to leave and go and learn from other people other than my family and my parents, and develop my own style and kind of live without a safety net, so to speak. It allowed me to come back here with a different perspective. I think sometimes maybe my different perspective irritates the people around me, but for the most part, it seems to be working.
Yeah, no, I love that. What are some of the things that you learned from being in the Navy?
Well, I think leadership was really emphasized heavily at all stages. I mean, it's in the military, you can't, if you have a group of 3 people, one of them is going to be elevated to be put in charge. If two of those guys were in the Navy for 2 days and one guy was in for 3 days, well, now he's in charge. So at a very early point in my career, I was put in charge of people that were working maintenance on the airplanes and fixing them. And the interesting thing about that is that the folks that were doing that job had been doing that. Every single one of them had been doing it longer than I had, and I outranked all of them. That's the nature of being an officer in the military.
Yeah.
And to include, I had this guy who was a chief petty officer who had been in the Navy for nearly 20 years, and I'd been in the Navy since breakfast yesterday. And it's a humbling thing. You feel like a fraud, and that imposter syndrome that a lot of people talk about is very real. And I think recognizing that and learning how to be humble and say, it's my role in this organization to manage our team and manage the resources we have. It doesn't mean I have to be the smartest one at turning a wrench. And it doesn't mean that I have to know the most about this organization, but my job is to manage this group and lead this group. And when you go in with an attitude of, I know that you know more than me about this, and I'm going to learn everything I can so that I can support you and move obstacles out of your way. I don't think I learned that lesson overnight, but I did learn it. And it's an important lesson because, to your point, this industry that we're in happens to be a fairly mature industry at the moment. And so I don't meet people too often that are less experienced than I am. I think most folks I meet in this business, and it's probably similar for you, are more experienced. And in order to be taken seriously and to be credible with these folks that you're trying to support, they have to understand how much you value and respect what they do. So that was something that transferred directly over. A really important lesson that I learned is it is possible and it is okay for you to be in a role where your job is to support and manage a group, even if they are the technical experts they can do a thing way better than you can. If that makes sense.
No, that's very well said, and you're right that skill set that you described definitely transfers straight over to the food service industry, especially in the segment that we're part of is the brokerage business. And you're right, most people that I'd say majority of our manufacturer clients that we represent, their representatives are definitely more experienced, have been in the industry longer than I have. And, when you put together targets and plans and things like that, you have to be able to speak and support them at a level that, is congruent to what their expectations are, which is not easy to do. And it takes I think it's a humbling experience. There's always more that we can learn. And, and it's also asking for help from those around us who have been there and done that.
Absolutely. I'd never be afraid to ask for help.
For sure. So going back to when your family started the company back in 1912, I'm not a mathematician, but I think that would be 111 years.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Wow,
that qualifies you as a mathematician.
Yes. So, what were they doing in 1912? How did the business start?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see over my shoulder here, but there's a photo on the wall that is in my office and my brother's office, and it's also there's a life-size mural of it in the lobby of all of our offices, wherever you go in our territory. And that picture is it was actually taken in 1925, but that is a photo of the meat store, People's Cash Market, that was opened in 1912 in Lawrence, Massachusetts, not too far from where I'm sitting right now. And that was my family's first foray into the food business. And it wasn't they came here from Italy, my family, and they immigrated, and they were looking for. They were all working in textile mills. That was pretty common thing around here for immigrants. And so my family was looking for a way to better themselves. They were in a situation where they weren't making a lot of money. The working conditions were dangerous. They worked 6 days a week and from a very early age. So the food business offered an opportunity for these guys to first start working in the store and then get some ownership of the store. And eventually my great uncle owned the store, and that was our first foray. But this meat shop was a corner market in Lawrence, Mass. That was where people got their food from. So we actually have it printed on our business cards. And like I said before, it's a very prominent image for us. So we never forget. I can't walk into work and go to my desk without kind of looking and remembering where we came from. So that was the first generation of my family in the food business. And then my great grandfather also worked in that store. And then as the supermarket concept started to take hold, and these neighborhood markets started to become less and less of a factor, my great grandfather and my grandfather were pretty involved in that. And my grandfather actually, so he was the third generation, and his name is Letizio Senior. He was big in the wholesale side of the business. He actually ran a major distributor here in New England, in the Boston area, and retired from there back in the 90s. That was his first retirement. And then after a couple of years of retirement, he came back in and was the president of a major manufacturer in this area as well. So he had been on both the customer side of our business and on the client side of our business, believe it or not, which was interesting. And he has since retired, but he still hangs around and has so much great advice. And he's an awesome sounding board for myself and my brother and my father as well. So then my father, Al Letizio Sr., started our business in 1988. And it's actually interesting. His story is similar to mine. He was not going to be in the food business either. He went to school for clinical psychology, and my mother went to school for special education. So the two of them had their ideas in mind of what their careers were going to be, and people serving careers. And my father had worked for some of the various businesses that my family had and that my grandfather was running. So he had an expertise in the food business, but didn't really think it was his thing either. And then, outside of college, ended up, before he went on to to become a doctor of psychology, he decided to work in the food industry for a little while, worked for another broker, and after a couple of years decided, boy, I think I can do a pretty good job of this myself. And he struck out on his own with my mother. And that was 1988. And here we are just about to celebrate our 35th anniversary as a business here in just a few months. So he was another one who thought he was going to do something different. And here we are. Thank goodness he didn't.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Are there any brands from when you first started that you still represent today, or any ones that you've represented over 30 years?
Yeah, we have a few manufacturers that we've worked with for quite a long time. Some of the core ownership of the companies have changed, or brand names have changed, but there are two or three manufacturers that have been with us for just kind of since day one, which is pretty neat.
Isn't that cool?
We have a pretty special relationship with them. But we have quite a few manufacturers that we've been with for 20 plus years, which is really neat. I think it took us a few years to get our feet under us and figure out what the business was going to be. I say we, I won't say how old I was, but I was not old. But we, the royal we, we started out as like a partial New England deli broker in serving the retail industry. And then maybe it was going to be all of New England. And it used to be that you say all of New England, like that was a calling card. Like I can do all 6 states here. And then, and then it was multiple departments in the retail business. We started in the retail side of things. And then by 1996, we expanded into food service, doing New England for food service. And so there have been more expansions along the way. But as we started to round out that, who is it that we're going to be and what are we going to do? That's when we really formed some of those long-term relationships that have stuck around here.
So currently today, you do obviously food service and then retail still as well.
That's correct. Yeah, our business is about 60% retail and 40% food service.
Okay.
And I am specifically food service. My brother Nick actually runs the retail side of our business, and same thing. He left the family business, went off to do his own thing. And learned a ton, and came back after 4 or 5 years and is now running the retail side of our business with another gentleman, Mark. So that makes up about 60% of what we do. Mm-hmm. And 40% of it is food service, and that falls under the umbrella that I'm accountable for. And that's kind of our split.
I'm sure during 2020 in the pandemic and even 2021 that 60-40 split might have been more maybe 70-30 or 80-20. Towards retail. Yeah,
it was a really good time to be a diversified company. Mm-hmm. I'll definitely say that. And that's a testament to my parents' vision. They worked really hard over the years to build a company that could withstand a storm. And we've been through other things, just like every business has. Things happen, clients come and go, things that are outside of your control, customer consolidation, whatever it is. And what we have learned over the years is we've just learned to make change our friend and find ways to have turmoil become an advantage for us. But during COVID, it was definitely challenging. The retail side of our business thrived as people have to eat. That's the wonderful thing about our business. They're not going to stop eating. So it just might change where they eat. So the retail side of our business thrived, and the food service side of our business definitely struggled like everybody did. Mm-hmm. And but the really cool thing about our team being diverse and our portfolio being so varied is pretty early on in the pandemic, my parents came and addressed the food service team and said, "Listen, just want you all to know you have a home here. There's nothing to worry about. We've got your backs, you've got our backs, and you're not going anywhere." And so we were able to keep our team, at full strength the whole time. And not everybody was able to do that, and I certainly don't have any judgment on companies that couldn't do that. I'm just very thankful that we were in a position that we could because of our different kind of a setup. Sure. And so we had to find different ways to become busy, different, go volunteer in the community, go help the retail team, go find different ways to go sell hand sanitizer. I think we all became hand sanitizer experts at
oh my
point,
gosh.
Right?
Yes. That was crazy.
But it was a cool thing because it really allowed us to, we learned a lot about who we were, and our team learned a lot about who we were. And I think making it through that experience together really was a foundational thing for us. Even though here we were 30 years or plus into our business at that point, that was kind of a capstone moment for us, being able to make it through that together. If you can make it through a storm together, your team has some bonds that can't be broken.
Oh, absolutely. How many Letizios are in the business today?
Well, we have, I guess 4 of us. So my father, Al, is our president and CEO. He runs the day-to-day operations, very involved in all of our merger and acquisition type opportunities. Mm-hmm. As he likes to put it, he's trying to build the highway as fast as he can because we're driving down it right behind him. So he's does a lot of our real estate projects and finding places where we can put our office locations. And then I am responsible for food service, like I mentioned. My brother Nick responsible for retail, along with another gentleman. And then my mother Patty is she handles all of our compensation and benefits administration. So basically, you ended up with the clinical psychology student and the special needs teacher. Thank goodness, having the right skill set to support all of us crazy food service sales folks.
Yeah, no kidding. No, and what is you hear all the time family dynamics. It's either works really well or it doesn't really work at all. What makes your family dynamic special and unique?
Well, I think the cool thing about it is that we haven't gotten to a point where something that happens during the week keeps us from being able to enjoy being together outside of work. And I think I've heard of other family businesses that's not the case. And it makes me feel sad. I feel truly blessed that I get to come to work and I sit 10 feet away from my brother and 2 doors down from my father. And we enjoy talking to each other. We sometimes disagree on things, but, at the end of the day, we can go have dinner together at one of our houses or go hang around with the grandkids at my mom's pool. And unfortunately, for better or for worse, we still probably end up talking about work more than we should when we're outside of work. But the thing is, it's probably similar for you and your dad. I mean, this is the stuff that gets us excited. So I'm excited to talk. It's not like I'm talking about work because I'm like, I got to go pull the lever 100 more times and make the widget. Like, I'm excited because I'm tackling these challenges and these problems and these opportunities that are something different every day. And I get to share that experience with my family. It's a cool thing.
Yeah. No, I could definitely relate to that, with my dad and I obviously being in business together. And then even his brother, my uncle, worked for Artevizant, which was a protein redistributor here in Los Angeles. And he since has left there and purchased a meat market. And so we, when it comes to holidays together, my wife's always like, can you stop talking about food and business? I'm like, it's just so exciting. I love it. I know we're just selling food. I know it's hard. It's hard. And it's fun. Even like when I go to a restaurant, I look at, what condiments do they have out? What sugar packets do they have on the table? I look underneath the plate to see what brand it is. Like it's quirky, but it's just part of, it's in our blood.
Yeah. My wife has asked me a number of times, do you really have to ask the server if they made that in-house or, if they're buying that somewhere? Yes, I have to. I can't help myself.
Yes, I know the amount of times that I go up to order at a counter or I ask the waiter or waitress, what brand of cheese is this or what brand of meat or whatever it may be. And a lot of times they're like, I can't tell you what it is, but I'm just so curious as to what they're using, especially if I really like it. I'm curious if it's stuff that we represent.
It definitely makes it a little more fun when you know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I'm definitely somebody who likes to see the sausage get made. They say there's a saying, you don't want to see the sausage gets made. I want to see the sausage get made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've been into meat processing plants and other types of food service manufacturers and see how products are made. Again, it's a fun industry and it's when it's in your blood, it's in your blood and it's hard to get rid of it.
That's for sure.
When your dad first started the company back in 1988, you mentioned the New England states. Did he just cover one state to start, or how did that look back then?
Well, a lot of the retail business is driven by the territory of the store chains that you work with.
Okay.
So where in food service, if I'm speaking with a manufacturer, I might talk about a particular territory based on a given geography, whether it's a state or a group of states or something like that. So I might say upstate New York, and have that be considered a territory. On the retail side, oftentimes it's delineated more by the store banner that you work with. So, for example, you have Price Chopper on one side of the state, and Tops and Wegmans on another side of the state in upstate New York. And I don't want to get too deep into retail because I'll rapidly not know what I'm talking about. But you could very well work in only one portion of a state or one portion of a geography in the retail world if your territory coverage is assigned to that retailer. The flip side of it is every time a retailer opens up a new store, your territory grows a little bit. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
But no, initially we were just a portion of New England. Basically, and most of the population of New England is centered around the Boston area and into Connecticut. So we were mostly in that area, and then grew to cover the 6 New England states and the rest of that territory. And actually now the retail side of our business goes from Maine all the way down to Florida, and then west as far as Michigan at this point. So gone a little further than Massachusetts now.
Yeah, no kidding. In food service, you have the New England states. Do you have other states outside of those 6?
We do. We actually cover food service from Virginia through Maine. So we have that broken into 5 sub-geographies, basically New England, upstate New York, metro New York, the Eastern PA area, and then the Mid-Atlantic or Maryland, Virginia area.
When you enter into a new market, have you traditionally, has it been organically, hire somebody to start out there, or do you do mergers and acquisitions? How do you usually do that?
Yeah, we've done it both ways. And oftentimes it's precipitated by a client, usually somebody we've been working with who we've got a long-term relationship with, and they trust us and they say, hey, I've got a need here. I suspect maybe others might as well, and maybe you should consider doing what you do in a bigger area. Sometimes it's a matter of we get introduced or we're friends with another broker or a sales agency, and when the time comes that they're starting to think about retirement, if they don't have a succession plan in mind or something, that becomes an opportunity. That's actually been a pretty cool thing because we've had a handful of acquisitions or mergers that have gone great, and they go great because you fold their organization in, they stick around for a little while as long as they want to, and when they're ready to ride off into the sunset, they stay as your friend, and you're really a family member at that point, and you still keep in touch, and that's how that worked right. And what we like to tell them is like it's not the end of their story; it's just kind of turning the page to a new chapter. Yeah. So that's the acquisition side of it, and that's cool because it's turnkey. It's like day one, you have a staff and you have an office and you have clients, and it works really well. But it also comes with its own challenges because when you combine 2 organizations, you have 2 different cultures that you have to try to meld.
That's right.
The other way we've done it, the organic way, is like you said, you have a client or something that says, I'd like you to work here for me, and it comes with X amount of dollars, and what can you do with that? And you start looking, okay, so, well, if I hire 2 or 3 people to get started with, then I can start convincing some other folks to come together. And it's really fun. It's really exciting because it's very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Because you are really you're building a new P&L. And when you do it, it helps to be supported by an organization. Obviously, when we move into a new market, we have the support of the greater A.J. Letizio organization. So it's not like we're striking out on our own and we have to be profitable on day one, but really there's an expectation that we're not going to be operating at a loss for very long, if at all. So it gives you a chance to really try to build a business unit that could sustain itself on its own. Obviously, thankfully, we have the support of the greater organization and don't have to do that. But it's a really fun challenge. It's a fun thing to work on. And the cool thing about that is when you do it organically and you go out and recruit people, you have the opportunity to go and kind of cherry pick. And so the people that you work with oftentimes are some of the best people out there in the industry. And whether they've had an experience that didn't work out for them, or they just weren't quite the right fit at the organization they were at, or the organization wasn't the right fit for them, I should say. If you can get some of these folks to make the decision and take a chance on you, there's definitely an element of trust. It's almost like a marriage, but you get people to decide, right, I'm gonna uproot my career and my family's livelihood and come work with you. And they put a lot of trust in our organization to have their back. And but it's worked out really well. And some of the really best folks I've ever worked with in any organization have been some of these folks that I never met before, but somebody said, hey, you should really go talk to this person. And the next thing you know, it's like, wow, I feel like I've known you all my life. And, when can we start working together? So both ways, organic and acquisition are awesome. They come with advantages and challenges. I don't have a favorite way. I don't think it's gone any better or worse. It's just been timing, what's worked out for us each time.
Yeah, we've had very similar. It's really what the opportunities presented in front of you, and reviewing that. And you're right. When you purchase another broker, and I can only speak to the food service broker side, it's we have a unique business. And is it attractive to like a hedge fund or some large bank, or it's really the other brokers in our industry that it's attractive to? We understand it and how it all works and managing the brands, and it's kind of very unique. And in the past, when we've taken over other brokers as well, you're right that the cultural fit is really the hardest piece. And we find that sometimes certain employees have different one-off deals that you have to kind of streamline, and they're used to doing it a certain way because they've done it forever that way. It has its own challenges, but it's fun too. It is fun, especially when it clicks and it works. And sometimes it takes a while to get the whole process to mesh.
Yeah, it's you said it. There's all kinds of intricacies, and some of them you don't find for a couple of years into it, and then something pops up, and I've had this thing on my mind for the last 24 months. Well, I'm glad you brought it up. Let's address it. But it's a cool thing. And the cool thing about it too is some of these organizations that have come in and joined us, even though they come with their own culture and their own setups and things that are different, they've been doing this a long time. And like you said, people that are not doing what we do don't totally get it. Even the people who get it don't really get it. You have to kind of be doing this to totally understand what we do and know all of the intricacies of it. And so getting to know people that were your competitors that you stared at across the aisle at the food show, and you said hello and you're cordial, but really you wanted to eat their lunch and they wanted to eat your lunch. You can be friendly competitors, but at the end of the day, you're still competitors. But all of a sudden, going from this mode of competing to collaborating, it's such a cool experience because there's so much to learn, and they've gone through some of the same trials and tribulations that we've gone through and handled them differently and learned different things. And we have things organizationally, institutional knowledge that we share with them that blows their minds, and they have the same that totally blows our minds. And what we always find, and I don't know why it still surprises me, but I always find that I can't believe how much I have in common with these guys that were my competitors, and again, back to the thing I said at the beginning about a level of humility and a level of experience. Like, once again, I'm involved with these deals that are coming together with people who are thinking about, transitioning their business that they've built for decades. And we all know in the room that they know way more about what we're talking about than I do. And my job is to try to find a way to work within our organization to bring these groups together and just continue to support their team the way that I support our team. And so all back to that kind of humility thing and recognizing that these guys are truly, like, you want to use the word expert, these guys are truly experts, and there's so much to learn from them. So even though yesterday they were your competitor, today, like, it's a little bit of, sit down and open your ears and see what you can learn.
Totally. In the brokerage business, for better or for worse, it's a good thing when it happens, when brands come your way, but it does happen where brands exit as well. If you could think back on, because I'm sure there's been at least one brand that in your time on the food service brokerage side that you've lost, and it was a significant part of revenue. And maybe what was that experience like, and how did you overcome that as a company?
We've never lost a client. So no, just kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wow, that is impressive.
No, listen, you're right. It does happen, and sometimes when it happens, you have to see what you have to do some soul searching and figure out. Am I wrong or are they wrong? And if they're right, what can I learn from this and do better? I think many of the times that we've been through that, it doesn't happen very often. Thankfully. We like to think we do a pretty good job, and I think we're doing more in the adding column than the subtracting column these days. But but it does happen. And oftentimes it's a cultural thing. I think you find that maybe the mission that they're on isn't quite the same as the mission that you're on, and your way of going to market just may not be. Maybe they hire somebody who's got a different vision, and that person happens to think they're the smartest person in the world, and their organization has bought into it. And sometimes that happens. People go a different way, and you just wish them well, and at least out loud, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but you wish them well, and you move on to the next thing. But what we have found is almost every time something like that has happened, a new door is opened up, and it's like you are able to take a quick step back and refocus a little bit, and you were so focused on this challenge that you had in front of you that you were missing these other opportunities. And the next thing you know, your phone's ringing and somebody's saying, "Hey, I heard you became available, and I'm really interested. And what can we do?" And I can't think of a single time that we've had a manufacturer choose to part ways with us that it hasn't pretty much immediately turned over into something that was a growth opportunity for us.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it is a gut check. These are the things in our world, thankfully, like nobody's jumping over the desk and punching me in the face here, or like, we're not driving race cars or curing cancer. We're selling food in a box.
That's right.
But those are the things that, as somebody who manages a sales agency and, people count on, those are the things that I wouldn't say keep me up at night, but those are the things that I worry about and I work hard to avoid. So it is definitely a hard thing to get through, but you do have to process it quickly and take a step back and reassure the team and say, "Hey, what's the opportunity? Let's go see what's going to knock on our door next week that's going to totally change our world." And usually it works out that way.
Yeah. No, one of the very first interviews I did on the podcast was with Dave Lyons, and Dave Lyons was the president of Food Sales West, which was a large broker here in the West. And he talked about his experience. It was like in a year span, and Pepsi purchased brands that he represented, like Quaker and Tropicana. He might have represented Pepsi at the same time. They all went direct, all at the same exact moment. And he goes, it was such a huge loss of revenue. And, having somebody experienced, he was in a car with somebody when he got the call. And they're like, that's the brokerage business, it comes and goes. And he said, he was able to keep everybody on board, and they weathered that storm and got stronger because of it. And eventually they rolled up into Advantage Waypoint and now Waypoint. But, he had a very successful career in the food service brokerage industry. And sometimes it's those setbacks that help us propel forward in our career.
Absolutely.
What is something that, looking far into the future, that you want to achieve that you've not yet achieved in the food service industry?
Boy, that's a tough one. So I think one of the things that I talk with my father and other folks in the company about is trying to figure out what is it that we want to do next. Like you said, what's the thing that we haven't achieved that we'd like to? When I took over this role, we were in one of those markets that I described. We were just a New England only food service. And I worked really hard to surround myself with people that were smarter than me and get the right people on the bus, and you can go anywhere you want to. That's one of my favorite sayings. And so we worked really hard to get the right people on the bus, and opportunities fell into our lap, but opportunities came up, and we were able to seize them. And so the next thing we're in 2 markets. We expanded into upstate New York, and I thought to myself, well, boy, we're going to be the solution now. We're in 2 markets, and everybody's going to just come running to us. And all they said was, well, how come you're not in Metro New York if you're in these 2 markets?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we need to be in Metro, and we, a couple of years down the road, now we're in Metro, and then the next thing people say is, well, if you did these 3 markets, why didn't you just do the whole Northeast? Like, okay, right. When will you be happy? But
right.
So we did. We expanded into the Northeast, and now questions I get are geographically, which direction are you going next? What other markets do you want to do? And
sure.
I don't have the answer to that. It's interesting. I've tried to put my finger on what would be the goal, but the thing is, I just don't know. We've gone after these opportunities when they've come up at the right time, and we've seized them. And that's the cool thing about learning from my father and his entrepreneurial spirit and his kind of boldness out there, is that when something comes up, we're going to grab it, and we're going to ride that horse as best we can, and hopefully not get thrown off of it. And we don't always do everything perfectly, but we're willing to take some risks and work real hard at it. Yeah. So I don't have this grand vision of being a national company or half the country or any particular geographic reach. I wonder sometimes what are the other spaces that are kind of adjacent to our industry that might be interesting to get involved in. Maybe more in the technology side of things with some of the point of sale stuff out there. Maybe on the beverage side. I mean, if you think about it, there are a lot of things that are going into these operators that are completely outside of our sphere of influence, even though they have the same customer. And ultimately, if you go to eat at that restaurant, you're gonna access all of these things, but we're only involved in a piece of it. So sometimes I wonder whether our expansion will be one more of depth than it will be of breadth. I don't really know, but I know that my dad has a saying: if you're green, you're growing, and if you're ripe, you're rotten. So our kind of mandate is keep growing. We're gonna keep growing. We've been experiencing double-digit growth for the past handful of years here in a relatively mature stage of our business. So the mandate is to grow, and what that's going to look like, I'm not sure, but that's the job.
Sure, I love that. Yeah, we just recently moved into Hawaii, and
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you need me to go out there and support you?
Anytime, come on out. And it's not like doing business here on the mainland. It's uniquely different. I mean, we've got Cisco out there, which is similar to, they're everywhere, but the distribution channels are different, and the way that they do business there is different. And even, versus California, Northern Cal or Southern Cal or Las Vegas, there's just different ways of doing business. And I found that when we go to another market, it's learning the population there and how they work. And it's a puzzle. You got to make sure you put the pieces in the right place.
That's pretty cool to be able to have a new puzzle like that, because
Totally.
Even though it's similar, I'm sure it's just different enough that it's definitely takes some extra thinking. That's really neat.
That's right. If you were to give advice to your younger self before you get into the Navy, and before you join with your family here on the food service brokerage side, what advice would you give yourself?
I think I would give myself the advice of trying to listen more and speak less. And I don't know if I would be capable of doing that. I know right now I should do that, and I'm not really capable of it. But I'm in sales, so that's what I do. I talk. No, I learned a lot of those lessons. Some of the stuff that I referenced earlier about lessons in leadership, the hard way. I learned by being a less effective leader, and then over time becoming more effective. And I still learn lessons every single day, and I know I've got a long way to go on my personal journey to being the leader that I would like to be. But I certainly know more about it today than I did, back then. And I think that if I would have opened up my ears and my perspective to learn from those around me who had been doing it a little bit earlier, I think that would have been a really valuable thing. And I don't think most people would disagree with that. I'm not totally embarrassed about anything from back in those days, but definitely, maybe a little bit overconfident at that point.
Sure. Well, Adam, thank you so much for, taking time out of your day to meet with me and share your story and your family's story. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I was looking forward to this, to learn more about yourself. And, because we see each other ever so often at different trade shows or food shows or, client meetings that we share. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, Nick. Absolutely. I really enjoyed it. And, a lot of the relationships that we have in common in the industry, people are always telling me you need to be doing more with Portillo. They're kind of the analog to you guys on the opposite coast. And
I get it all the time.
The more we can collaborate and spend time together, I think it's definitely a great thing. So I really appreciate the invitation and the honor of being included in the podcast. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much.